Welcome everyone to today's lesson of Science Prodigy, our science sessions. We are on science session 17 and today's lesson is on cells. So again, for the people who are new, make sure that we have a couple of rules that you need to follow. Make sure that you always have proper etiquette. If you have a question in the participants, you can raise your hand and I will gladly answer it. Also, if you have a question and I cannot come to you right at that moment, you can type it in the chat and someone else can answer it if they know the answer. Also, if you have an extra idea on something, you can also type that in the chat. And without further ado, let's start. So this is how our lessons go. We always start off with our warm-up. And this is today's warm-up. We have 3 warm-ups. You can choose one of them. And you have about 2 minutes to do the one of the warm-ups. You don't have to do all of them. After the warm-up, we'll usually review it and go over last class, a review of last class. After that, we'll go over today's lesson and we'll review today's lesson. And after the lesson, we'll always have a quiz. And after that, we'll either have a game or a demonstration. And after that is done, you are all free to answer a poll that is given. And after the poll, you are all free to leave. So without further ado, you are free to answer one of the warm-ups. Okay then, let's review our warm-up. So let's start off with warm-up 1. If you have an answer to warm-up 1 in the chat, please raise your hand. Okay. If you weren't here, oh, that's another thing. If you were not here for the previous class, you do not have to do the warm-up, but I highly recommend you try. Okay, so let's choose for warm-up 1, name the stages in complete metamorphosis. Okay, let's see. Samita, I've unmuted you. What is your answer for warm-up 1? Let's see what you have.
For warm-up 1, the complete stages in metamorphosis is first the egg, and then the egg hatches. After that, the egg goes in it goes into a larva, and then the adult starts forming, and then the adult comes out and their cycle starts again.
Okay, good job. That is almost correct, but you got all the most of the stages down, so good job. But you are missing one important stage. So for example, in complete metamorphosis, we have an example which is the butterfly. So of course, it starts off as an egg, then it becomes a larva, which is the caterpillar. And then the part you missed was it becomes a pupa. And that's when it's in its chrysalis. And then after it comes out of the cocoon or the chrysalis, it becomes the adult. And of course, the adult is our butterfly. Okay, So do you have an answer for warm up 2? Raise your hand. Okay. Warm up 2. Let's go with Aryan. What's your answer? What's your answer for warm up 2? You have an answer? Aryan? For warm up 2? Yeah. You have an answer for warm up 2? You're unmuted, don't worry, you can talk.
So for warm up 2, the first one is egg, then nymph, then adult.
That's it. There are only 3 stages: the egg, nymph, and adult. You got all of them. Perfect. And lastly, for warm up 3, name 3 facts about the life cycle of the mammal. You can type it in. You can raise your hand, and I'll pick on some. Okay. Warm up 3. Let's go with Kaushik. No answer? Okay, that's okay. Harika, do you have an answer for warm up 3?
The life cycle of the mammal, there's a giving birth to young, and then there's on land, or I don't know in water, but in land there's the mother feeds the young with milk. And the third fact, I don't know.
That's okay. You have 2 facts. That's perfectly okay. But what you could have said is that we have the gestation period as well. If you guys remember, the gestation period is the period when the baby is inside of the mother. And then we have exactly how the life cycle works. And of course, all mammals always get their milk from their mother. Okay then, so that was our warm up. Let's do a quick 1-minute review of last class. We talked about metamorphosis. In complete metamorphosis, our 4 stages: our egg, our larva, our pupa, and adult. In incomplete metamorphosis, we have egg, nymph, and adult. For example, in complete metamorphosis, we have a butterfly, and in incomplete metamorphosis, we can have a cockroach. Then for spiders, there are 3 main parts: the egg, the adult, and the spiderling. The spiderling is the immature stage, and the adult is the mature stage. Then in frogs, we have our eggs, which is the spawn, then our tadpoles. Then it loses its gills, gets its legs, and becomes a froglet, and eventually an adult. In reptiles, we have our hatchling, which becomes a juvenile and then an adult. We ourselves are juveniles. In a bird, we have our hatchling after the egg hatches, and then becomes a nestling, then becomes a fledgling when it first flies, and then becomes a juvenile and eventually an adult. And then we have our fish. From the egg to the larva, like normal, it becomes a fry, and then a juvenile, a smolt, and then an adult. And of course, we have our mammals, which it gives birth, it grows, it reproduces, and then it dies. And that's if you have your full life. Okay, so let's move on to today's lesson. So our lesson today is on the cell. So this topic is kind of big. We're trying to fit it in one lesson, but you don't have to remember everything in this lesson. Just try to remember the main points. So what is the cell? The cell is all the living organisms are made up of cells. Cells are the basic structural unit of life. It's the basic unit of life. It's what we are made of. Without cells, we don't live. No organism does. Some tiny organisms like bacteria and yeast are made up of only one cell. Large plants and animals are made up of billion cells. Human beings are made up of trillions of cells. The cells are called the building blocks of life. And there are many different studies of cells. Cell biology, cellular biology, or cytology. So organisms can be classified as unicellular or multicellular. So of course, we are multicellular. We know multi means more, lots. So lots of cells. That's all organisms, plants and animals. And then we have the unicellular organisms, which are only bacteria. They only have one cell. Bacteria might have one cell, but us and all other organisms like plants and animals, we have billions to trillions of cells. Most of the unicellular organisms are classified as microorganisms. Cells were discovered by the scientist Robert Hooke. So there was a question that arose, where are the videos? So of course we are recording this, and our videos on my YouTube channel, also in the Facebook group, they are posted. So your parents are most likely part of the Facebook group. If you want to find it on, you can just search up in Google, Science Prodigy Facebook, and the first link will be our Facebook page, and there are all of our videos, and those are all of our lessons. Also, our lessons, today's lesson and yesterday's lesson will be posted by Monday. Okay, let's continue. So the basic properties of cells. Cells exist in a variety of shapes and sizes. For example, they might be cube-shaped or disc-shaped, but most of them are very tiny. For example, 10,000 human cells could fit on the head of a pin. So a head of a pin is almost the size of the top of our finger. So the head of a pin is probably like the diameter of our fingernail or smaller, way smaller. And 10,000 cells could fit on that. 10,000, that's very small. But bacteria cells can be very, very, very small, much smaller. A much larger example of a single cell is the egg of the bird. Nerve cells are thin cells that can be as long as a meter. We'll talk more about different types of cells. Regardless of its shape and sizes, every cell can perform certain functions on its own. It can digest nutrients to provide its own energy. It can also produce new cells by making copies of itself. Most cells do this by dividing. We'll talk very basic about mitosis and meiosis, not too much in detail about that, but I'll just give the very basic introduction. And in organisms with many cells, each cell must also cooperate with other cells. And to do this, a cell must communicate with its neighbors. Most many-celled organisms or multicelled cellular organisms have cells of various kinds. The cells form different structures and perform different functions. And of course, different types of cells form muscles, eyes, or teeth. And different types of plant cells form flowers, fruits, or seeds. Okay, so these are the most basic types. So if you go back to our lesson about vertebrae and invertebrate and animal classification, remember that it starts off very basic with the kingdom, then it can be further divided. So just like that, cells can be further divided into prokaryotic and eukaryotic. And then, of course, prokaryotic stops there, but eukaryotic can divide into animal cells and plant cells. So first are prokaryotic and eukaryotic cells. This is the most basic. You should try to remember these names. So you all are muted, but you can try saying it out loud while you listen. So each type of cell is specialized to carry out particular functions, either solely, but usually by forming a tissue. Different tissues then combine and form specific organs, like our heart and our lungs. So what are they? What are prokaryotic and what are eukaryotic cells? A prokaryotic cell is a simple small cell with no nucleus. Organisms made from prokaryotic cells are much smaller, such as bacteria. So we can already know that they are single-celled. So prokaryotic cells are usually bacteria. Then we have our eukaryotic cells. These cells are typically larger and a lot bigger. They are more complex than prokaryotic cells. They have a nucleus. And what the nucleus is, it's like the controller of the cell. It controls everything that goes on in the cells. And those are in the eukaryotic cells. That's in humans and plants. So why is the nucleus so important? It has the DNA. And the DNA contains our genetic information and chromosomes. So for example, our parents' DNA. Maybe you have for example, curly hair like your father, or you have blue eyes like your mother. Something like that will all be in your DNA. And what stores the DNA is the nucleus. And of course, those are found in plants and animals. So if eukaryotic cells have nucleus, then prokaryotic cells do not have nucleuses. But where does it store its chromosomes? Well, it doesn't have to store it in a nucleus for prokaryotic cells. So I'll talk about that in a little bit. But prokaryotic cells have three main regions. The outside protection or envelope of the cell is made up of the cell wall, plasma membrane, and capsule. The flagella, which are like whip-like appendages that can help the cell to move. So not all prokaryotic cells have a flagella. The inside of the cell is called the cytoplasmic region. This region includes the nucleoid, cytoplasm, and ribosomes. So you don't need to memorize all of these names. It's kind of complex for your guys' age. This is you guys will be very high in your classes. But if I just talk about the most important things of a prokaryotic cell, we can first of all think that it has a nucleoid, and that stores its DNA. That's where the DNA is. We'll talk more about the cytoplasm in eukaryotic cells. But of course, cytoplasm is in both prokaryotic and eukaryotic cells. The cell wall, you can think of as like the walls of the cell. It's the outer layer. It's like the bodyguard of the cell. So on the outer layer, all of this is the cell wall. And then of course, we have our capsule, which is this area, and our pilus, which are these hairs. And both prokaryotic and eukaryotic cells have them. It's the flagellum, but not all prokaryotic cells have them. But the main reason that they have them is to move around. So without them, they wouldn't be able to move that easily. And of course, the ribosomes. Those are super important, but we'll talk more about them in the eukaryotic cells. Okay, now let's move on. The common features. So you guys should only remember the most important ones for now. You should try remembering all of them, but these are the most important ones. We have our cell wall. We have our plasma membrane. We have our ribosomes. We have our pili. And we have our plasmid. So not all of them have capsules, but mainly we can think of, like I talked about earlier, our cell wall right over here. That's the outer layer. It's like the bodyguard. And if you guys were wondering, do eukaryotic cells have them? Well, some of them do. And that's what comes in to play the plant cells and animal cells. But I'll talk about that later. So the plasma membrane, that's also inside. It's not the complete outside layer, but it's also part of the walls. We have our plasmids. Plasmids are very important, but we'll talk about them later. Ribosomes are also super important. They are needed in the cells, and we'll talk about them later as well. So what are the cell wall? All prokaryotics have a cell wall that adds structural support to keep it structured, keep it solid and rigid. Cell wall acts as a barrier and anchors the flagella, which helps it move. The capsules is an extra layer outside of the cell wall. It protects the cell when it's engulfed by other organisms, when it's eaten. And it also assists in retaining moisture and helps the cell adhere to, of course, the surfaces and nutrients of, for example, bread. That's where bacteria can be. Then we have our pili. Pili are the hair-like structures on the surface of the cell that attach to other bacterial cells or surfaces. Then we have our lack of compartmentalization. So that's just that within the plasma membrane, the cytoplasm is not subdivided by membranes into organelles. Now the nucleoid, that's where it stores its genetic information. The prokaryotic cells contain only a singular piece of chromosomal DNA stored in an area called the nucleoid. We also have plasmids. So this is very important for prokaryotes. Some prokaryotes also carry small circles of DNA called plasmids. Plasmids are physically separated forms which can replicate independently or of the chromosomal DNA. So the plasmids are used the most to help replicate the cells for the DNA to also be replicated. So the cells, for example, the replicated cells will also have the same DNA as the original. The genetic information on the plasmids is transferable between cells, allowing prokaryotes to share abilities such as antibiotic resistance. Plasmids have the ability to amplify, which means to make many copies. So we can think of that like the plasmids have the ability to replicate or reproduce. So they have a large number of characteristics. Some prokaryotes live in the absence of oxygen. Some of them live in extreme hot or cold temperatures. And some of them live on the bottom of the ocean where the only resource is hydrogen sulfide bubbling up from the core of the earth. That's a hydrothermal vents. And we'll probably talk about that in a later lesson. Now is our big part. So far it might seem overwhelming, like, oh my God, my brain is filled up with lots of prokaryotic cells, but that's not as important as the eukaryotic cells. This is the most important part of the cells, which is the eukaryotic cells. They have a nucleus, which is the main difference. So eukaryotic cells have nucleuses, whereas the prokaryotics do not. So that's where this DNA is housed. That's where it is. And these types of cells are found in plants and animals. Okay, so I'll talk about all of these parts, most of them at least. A eukaryote is an organism whose cell is organized into complex structures by internal membranes and a cytoskeleton. The most important characteristic membrane-bound structure is the nucleus. That's the most important organelle. That's what we call these. So, for example, other organelles may include, like in this picture, we have our vacuole, that's an example, our mitochondria, and of course, our Golgi apparatus. We'll talk more about those, of course. The nucleus is the membrane enclosed organelle that contains DNA. The feature that gives them their name comes from the Greek, which means true nucleus. And eukaryotic DNA is organized into one or more linear molecules called chromosomes. So I think all of you should have been very soon there. Your guys' grades should be going up. So when your grades are higher, I'll talk more about these chromosomes, because those are they're pretty overwhelming. They're pretty important, but they are hard to learn. Some eukaryotes are single-celled, but many are multicellular. Eukaryotes include all slime molds, protozoa, fungi, plants, and of course, animals like us. So here are the main parts of a cell, of a eukaryote cell. The membrane, mitochondria, ribosomes, nucleus, cytoplasm, and lysosome. The membrane is the outer boundary of the cell, sort of like skin. It allows some substances in and keeps others out. This membrane, so I'll talk more about the membrane because plant cells and animal cells are different. So if you guys remember, the prokaryotic cells have a cell wall. And even though plant cells are eukaryotic, they also have a cell wall. So the membrane that is the only outer body of animal cells. That's the cell membrane. But in plant cells, the cell wall is outside and then the cell membrane is inside. So we can think of the cell membrane as like a door. It lets the things that we need inside, but it also lets unwanted things that we do not want outside. The mitochondria is where the cell gets its energy. In the human body, food we have digested reacts with oxygen in the mitochondria to make energy. So we can think of the mitochondria like the powerhouse of the cell. It's like the electricity generator of our house. It creates the power, it creates the energy for the whole cell to work. Then we have ribosomes. Ribosomes are like tiny factories that make different things the cell needs to function, like proteins. That's the most important part of ribosomes. Then we have, of course, our nucleus, the brains of the cell. It uses chromosomes to instruct the rest of the cell what to do. We have our cytoplasm. This is the stuff that fills up the rest of the cell. The other components of the cell float around in the cytoplasm. It's mostly water. So if we think of cytoplasm as in the cell, so if we have our house like a cell, our cytoplasm is most likely going to be the air, because if the other parts, the other organelles like mitochondria, the ribosomes, and the nucleus are all, for example, I don't know, the mitochondria could be the electricity, and possibly our nucleus could be us. So what else takes up our space in our houses? That's the air. Otherwise, if there's no air, we can't breathe. There's nothing else in here. But of course, we do have air. We have oxygen. So that oxygen is like the cytoplasm in a cell. It takes up the rest of the cell. And of course, we have our lysosomes. These guys clean up the place, getting rid of waste and other unwanted cells that may get into the cell. The components inside the cell, like the nucleus, ribosomes, lysosomes, and etc., are called organelles. So I think we're going a little bit slow, so I'm just going to tell the main part of this slide is that in addition to plasma membranes, cytoplasm, and a nucleus, and of course the ribosome, eukaryotic cells also contain membrane-bound organelles, and each organelle has its own function or what to do. Okay, let's go on. So what about the differences? Our prokaryotic cell and our eukaryotic cell. What similarities do we see, first of all? Well, we can see that both of them have ribosomes. It's not shown in this picture, but both of them do have ribosomes. And this is probably an animal cell, but in plant cells, they both have cell walls. Usually they all have phalangiums, except for in prokaryotic cells, some of them do not. And they do have DNA, but in this case, they have nucleoids which store it. I mean, in this case, they have the nucleus. But of course, the thing that will always be the same, definitely, nothing can change that, is the cytoplasm. It will take up the rest of the space. So here are our differences. So the plasma membrane are in prokaryotic or eukaryotic. They're in both. DNA is in both. Cytoplasm is in both, and ribosomes are in both. So these ones are in both. So the ones that are in both, I'm going to do in a bluish color. So both plasma membrane, DNA, and cytoplasm, and our ribosome. But what about ones that are only, for example, our nucleus? Those are only in the eukaryotic cells and not in the prokaryotic cells. Our nucleolus is inside the nucleus and is only in eukaryotic cells. The mitochondria is like the powerhouse, but it's also only in the eukaryotic cell. And other membrane-bound organelles are in only the eukaryotic part. But what about if some of them, if they are varying, then they're going to be in green. The cell wall. So all of the prokaryotic cells have a cell wall, but only the plant cells have a cell wall, not the animal cells. And lastly, we have the ones that are only in the prokaryotic cells, our capsule and our pili. Of course, our phalangium, don't forget the phalangium, that is both. So clearly in just these, of course, there are many, many more organelles, but just in these, we can see that there is a lot of diversity. Some of them are only in eukaryote and some of them are only in prokaryotes. Okay, so plant cells. So I will go a little bit fast on this because we're running out of time. So identifying plant cells are easy because they have three things that make them different from animal cells. Three main things. Our first main thing is the cell wall. They have cell walls, whereas animal cells do not have cell walls. Their cell walls are made of cellulose, which is thick and rigid. Animal cells do not have the same kind of protective area. Plant cells also have different types of organelles called vacuoles, which are filled with water and green chloroplast. But you might think, oh, that means the animal cells don't have vacuoles. But actually they do. Animal cells do have vacuoles. I'll show you in our diagram. They do, so in plant cells, there is a big area, which is the vacuole. It's a very large area. There's only one vacuole. But in animal cells, we have small vacuoles, but there are lots of them. There are like 5 to 6, 6 to 7. There are a lot of vacuoles in animal cells, and in plant cells, there's only one, but it's going to be very big. But they also don't have plastids. For example, is the chloroplast. That's our third way. Chloroplast is the matter that makes plant cells convert sunlight into energy. That's what we talked about in our lesson on plants. We talked about photosynthesis, and of course, that's in the plant cells, our chloroplast, which stores chlorophyll. That makes our plants green, that helps with making the food, that also helps with the food chain and the food web. So the chloroplast is very important in plant cells, but not as much in animal cells. If it was in animal cells, all of us, all humans, all animals, we'd all be green. Can you imagine that? No, come on. If we were green, then that would be really weird. And that means that we can make our own food. That's cool. Now here's our thing. This is a perfect diagram. And of course, as always, I need to talk about it. And in red, let's talk about it in red. We have our cell wall, that's our outer layer. Then we have our cell membrane, which is a little bit inner. Those are like the boundaries. Then we have our main things. So we have our in the plant cell, we might think of the vacuole a little bit bigger than our nucleus. So this vacuole, it's very important because it stores 3 things, which I'll talk about later. So I'll tell you that it's water, waste, and nutrients. But what about the lysosomes? Didn't we talk about the lysosomes as they make sure that the waste isn't around the cell? Well, the vacuole doesn't take it. It doesn't clean the cell up. The vacuole just keeps it. So we can think of like, for example, the vacuole as the dumpster. But it also stores water, like our water tanks, and it also stores nutrients like the ground. So it's very important. Then, of course, we have another main part, our nucleus and our nucleolus, and inside here we have our chromosomes. And this is our leader, our most important part of the cell that takes care and does the most important things. It tells the cell what to do. Now in pink, we have our smaller kind of things. We have our chloroplast, which is needed. This is a plant cell, which is needed for photosynthesis. Then we have our centrosomes, which I'll talk about later, and our amyloplast, which I'll also talk about later. Then let me do this in yellow. We have our rough endoplasmic reticulum and our smooth endoplasmic reticulum. I'll talk about those 2 later. We have our ribosomes. They haven't pictured the lysosomes in this, but there are lysosomes. And we have our Golgi apparatus or Golgi body. And of course, we have our last but not least, our mitochondria. But in our last color, our black color, we have the rest, which is the outside part. We have our cytoplasm. And our cytoplasm is the one that takes up the rest. So you can kind of think of the cell like a house. Okay, this looks kind of overwhelming, right? But if you think about it, it's not if you try to understand its main function, the most important part. I'm not going to read every sentence. I'll just tell the most important part. The cell membrane encloses the animal cells and then is also inner the cell wall that controls what comes in and out of the cell. The cell wall is the major barrier that protects plant cells. The chloroplast helps with photosynthesis and makes the plant green. Cytoplasm holds all the organelles in a place and takes up the rest of the cell. The cytoskeleton is the skeleton and structure for cell support. The endoplasmic reticulum makes and moves all the chemical compounds from and to the nucleus. The Golgi apparatus has the power to change fats and proteins and gets them ready to move out of the cell. Our lysosome is the waste management. It breaks down the waste into compounds, which is simpler to use by other organelles. Our mitochondria is like the powerhouse of the cell. It changes oxygens into energy and nutrients. Our nucleus is the brain of the cell and also keeps the DNA in it. The peroxisomes are important for the cell health. It takes in toxic materials that enters and digests them. And we have our plasmodesmata, which gives the ability to move material and communicate with other cells. We have our ribosomes, which is the protein builder. And we have our vacuole, which maintains the pH level and stores waste, water, and nutrients. And lastly, we have our vesicle, which assists in enzyme storage and moves materials around and inside the cell. This is the plant cell. Of course, in animal cells, it will be different because there won't be the cell wall, and there won't be chloroplast, etc. So I'm just gonna go over the most important part. No, we don't need to go over all of it, but usually we'll talk about our main part, which is that the nucleus contains the genetic material for the organism, which is deoxyribonucleic acid, which is DNA. So plant cells are eukaryotic because they have a nucleus, and they're prokaryotic if they don't. They have plasma membranes, which is the thin outermost membrane that maintains the cell as a unit distinct from the neighboring structures. It serves as a mold and a limit for the inner contents of the cell, and it serves two purposes. It allows the cell to undergo several metabolic processes, and it also allows the cell to communicate with neighboring cells. We have cytoplasm, which is between everything, between the nucleus, the plasma membrane. It takes everything up, and it keeps the organelles in place. It doesn't let it move, or when this, for example, if the cell accidentally flips over, it's not going, the organelles won't go flying everywhere because the cytoplasm is like the liquid that holds it in place. We have our cell wall, which consists of cellulose. It's like the thing that holds the cell wall. It makes up the cell wall. And the cell wall, what it does, it's like the outside part of the plant cell. It makes sure that nothing unexpected comes and damages the cell. Then we have our plastids. Plants have three types: amyloplasts, chloroplasts, and chromoplasts. Amyloplasts do not have pigments like the other two types, but they store starch. Plenty of amyloplasts are found in the cells of plant cells like potatoes and in seeds. Our chloroplasts are organelles that contain chlorophyll and are responsible for sunlight to generate energy. And we have our chromoplasts, which do not contain chlorophyll but contain carotenoids, which are pigments to give their plants red and yellow colors. They're mainly important for attracting pollinators like butterflies and bees. And we have our vacuoles, which are organelles that store different types of substances and helps the cell grow. They can contain sugars, ions, or simply water. And during the cell growth, of course, the vacuole will also grow. The ribosomes and cytoskeleton are also important, but they are not organelles. Both are found in both plant and animal cells. The ribosomes are important for proteins, for producing polypeptides, which become proteins. The proteins are usually in the ribosome, so without the ribosomes, no proteins, and that's important for the cell to live. And the cytoskeleton is important for maintaining the overall shape. It's like our skeleton, like our backbone. It keeps the shape. But what about the ones found in both plants and animal cells? We have our nucleus, which is our leader, So I think by now you should know that the nucleus is one of the most important parts of the cell. Without it, it would go haywire. Okay. And we have our mitochondria, which is the powerhouse or power generator, where it helps with adenosine triphosphate, which is ATP. It helps with glucose, and it also helps with the powerhouse that creates the glucose, which of course in plant cells causes the food chain to work because it's the energy. And we have our endoplasmic reticulum, which is also referred as the ER. Rough endoplasmic reticulums serve where polypeptides become proteins from the ribosomes, and the smooth ER have no ribosomes and are where the lipids are synthesized. Then we have our Golgi apparatus and Golgi bodies. The final processing of proteins and lipids are occurring in the Golgi bodies. The biomolecules are then shipped to different parts of the cell. And we have our animal cells. I think we'll be able to finish in time. Yes, we'll be able to finish in time. We might go like 5 minutes over, but it'll be okay. So all living things are made of cells, but animals are made of animal cells. They lack the cell wall and chloroplasts. They lack the large vacuoles, but they have the smaller lots of vacuoles. So they can duplicate by making a copy of itself through reproduction. And the parts of the animal cells are called organelles, like obviously, like in our plant cells, just like the animal cells too. I'm not going to go over the ones we already went through, but I'll go over the new ones. We have our centrioles. The centrioles assist the cell when dividing in the process called mitosis and meiosis. Then we have our microfilaments. This is additional support for the structure of the cytoskeleton. Our microvilli, which absorbs nutrients needed by the cell and helps in the movement. Microtubules, another area of the cytoskeleton, structural support, which helps in an important role in chromosome connection where the cell divides. And lastly, we have our secretory vesicles, which controls the elements that are released by the cell, including the waste. So I think that we just need to go over a couple of things. The nucleus is the large circular object which contains which is containing the nucleolus. The nucleolus contains RNA, and some cells have more than one nucleolus. The nucleus also contains chromatins, which are long strands within the nucleus. When it's time to replicate, the chromatins wide up tightly and make up the DNA chromosome for the cell. Our endoplasmic reticulum are rough and smooth. Both are responsible for transporting material through the cell. The rough endoplasmic reticulum is covered in ribosomes, which gives it a rough appearance. The ribosomes are the location of protein synthesis, or where proteins used in the cell are put together. Our smooth ER contains enzymes, proteins, and lipids, which are used in different parts of the cell. Smooth ER buds off from the rough ER, endoplasmic reticulum. Our Golgi body is also known as the Golgi complex or Golgi apparatus. It's like a sac-like body that packages proteins and carbohydrates into membrane-covered sacs for import from the cell. These small membrane-covered sacs are called lysosomes. Once released from the Golgi body, the lysosome then connects to the cell membrane and releases contents from inside of the sac to outside. Lastly, one of our last slides, this is our second last slide, then we'll do the quiz. We have the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. It converts energy into glucose for photosynthesis and ATP, adenosine triphosphate. Vacuoles are organelles which are filled with fluid and help remove waste products from the cell. They also are digestive and help break down the food material within the cell. The cell membrane is the outermost limit of the cell. It's the barrier that determines what's inside and what's outside of the cell. Our cytoplasm is the liquid that fills the inside of the cell, and also the organelle proteins and tissues present inside the cells are all covered by cytoplasm. Now we have our types of cells. We're just going to go over a couple of them, the most important ones. We have the stem cells, red blood cells, white blood cells, and platelets. Those are, except for the stem cells, those three are part of our blood. We have our nerve cells, which are our brain cells, our muscle cells, our cartilage cells, which is like our nose and ears, our bone cells, our skin cells, our endothelial cells, and epithelial cells. Those are in another lesson, epithelial and endothelial. We might get to that lesson very soon, probably not, because it's kind of advanced. And we have fat cells and sex cells, which is used for reproduction. So both there are mitochondria, Golgi apparatus, our endoplasmic reticulums, nucleus, cytoplasm, and ribosomes. We have no cell wall, no chloroplast, no vacuoles. Flagella are in both, except in plant cells, only in gametes. Cell walls, large vacuoles, and chloroplasts. And that is it for today's lesson. I will stop sharing my screen. And now in the chat, I will post the link to the quiz. Those who are new, what we do in the quiz is you're supposed to either click on the quiz link. If it works, then you can click on it and then take the quiz. If it doesn't work, you're supposed to copy it, press Control C. Then in a new tab, you're supposed to press Control V. Or you can copy it by pressing right click and press copy. In the new tab, you can press the right click again, press paste, and then press enter. And also in the new tab, make sure you do it in the top part. It's called the web URL. That's where you keep it. And once you are done with the quiz, do not leave. I will post it. Please wait. Do not leave. Please don't leave yet. We still have 15 minutes of class. I'll give you guys 5 minutes for the quiz. And once you're done with the quiz, we'll review it and do a game today. We're doing a game. Okay, let's post the link. Okay, guys, let's go over the quiz now. Let's share my screen. Good. And let's preview it. Okay, what's our name? Of course, we're a class. So let's answer this. So this was a kind of hard quiz. So I will shout out today people who got more than 18 questions right. The cell is the basic unit of life. That's true. What organelles do prokaryotes not have? In the chat, you can type your answer. A, B, C, or D, or A, B. We have, the answer is the nucleus. Plants and animals have prokaryotic cells. No, they're eukaryotic cells. What part of the prokaryotic cell helps it to move? The answer is flagella. In the prokaryotic cell, what helps to make the copies? The answer is the plasmid, capsule, nucleoid, or plasma membrane. Okay. Yes. In prokaryotic cells, what stores the chromosomal DNA? The answer is the nucleoid. What does not have eukaryotic cells? Bacteria. It's prokaryotic that has it. If our house was a cell, what part of the house is the cytoplasm? The answer is the air. The powerhouse is the mitochondria. Both plant prokaryotic and eukaryotic cells have cytoplasm. Animal cells don't have vacuoles? No, of course they do. What organelle does not contribute to the differences between plants and animal cells? The answer is the endoplasmic reticulum. It has nothing to do with it. Okay. What organelle stores water, waste, and nutrients? The answer is the vacuole. Oh, I forgot to answer it? Okay. Okay, yeah. The answer was the plasmid. Okay. Cell walls are made of cellulose. Ribosomes help to create proteins, which is not a type of endoplasmic reticulum, the flat. What helps in cell division? The answer is the centriole. What type of cell is used in the nose and ear? The answer is cartilage. All eukaryotic cells have cell walls. No. Animal cells do not. And the nucleus is the controller of the cell. True. Let's make sure we have 100%. Okay, good job, guys. Now that we are finished, I will, don't worry guys, I will announce the people who got really good scores. I will answer, I'll say those people's names after our game. So today's game, okay, so how this game works is I have 3 pictures and you have to tell me what, for example, what part of the cell does it represent? What type of organelle? So after these 3 pictures, if we have time, we'll do a couple more. Okay, guys. So in the chat, you can type your answers. What part of the cell what is the kitchen of the cell? Let's see. Ooh, we have a lot of answers, different answers, but we do have a couple correct ones. Okay, the answer is the mitochondria, the kitchen of the house, of the cell, the kitchen, because that produces the energy. Now we have this. What is this? We have a dumpster truck, we have the ocean, and we have the soil. What are the game rules? Just in the chat, you can type in what part of the cell does this picture represent. Yes, most of your answers are correct. It is in fact the vacuole. Now one more, let's do one more before we can choose. Okay. This is like an office. What does this look like? Type in the chat. Yes, you all are correct. It's the nucleus. Okay then. Now that we are finished with those 3, let's do something. Let's say it without pictures, okay? Let's see. Okay, in our house, what is the cytoplasm of our house? Now we're going opposite. In the chat, good, the air. But now, what is the door of our house? What is the door? Our door is, no, yeah, no. Yeah, the main door, which one? A lot of you have said the answer is wrong. Got that one wrong. The cell membrane, yes, it's the cell membrane. Because the cell wall is like the outside part, not the door. Okay, now what about, the broomstick and the mop? What are they? No, don't leave yet. We're almost finished because there's a very important poll. Our poll is super important. Not the vacuole. Like a broomstick. Okay, yes. It is, in fact, our lysosomes, our good old lysosomes. Okay, then. So that was today's lesson. And today's game. I will stop sharing and the poll. Let's do the poll. But first, let me shout out those people who have gotten the good scores, the really amazing scores. We have gotten a lot of, this time, we've gotten a lot of good scores. So our first shout out is to Tanvi sorry if I pronounced your name wrong, Matakatla, who had 19 out of 20 points. That is amazing. Good job on this hard quiz. That is super amazing. Now we have Aryan Patel. He got an 18 out of 20. That's also amazing. Then we have Prajit, who got 19 out of 20. But this person went over the top. I'm really proud of her. Good job, Prisha. You got 100%. I'm really proud of you. So good job for today's quiz. And now here's our poll. So today's poll is very interesting because we have a surprise. Just getting it ready. Okay, so the poll is on. I just posted the poll. So launched. It's only one question because it's a very important question. Okay, so our poll question for those who aren't here is we have a new project where in one lesson, you can demonstrate a science lesson of your choice, like a science fair. Like you can choose a topic. For example, our first lesson, remember we had our water cycle and rock cycle lesson. We demonstrated a water cycle and we demonstrated a rock cycle. So like that, we can have a small science fair. But if most of you say yes, we'll do it. One of our late lessons. In the class, in one of the closed classes, I will promise to tell you that we'll have it. Because you're not required to do it. You don't have to. But okay, I'm sorry for forgetting to write this. It's like you don't have to do it. But do you want to watch other people do it? And also, do you want to do it? Do you want to try doing it, or do you want to watch doing it? Or do you not want to have it at all and have a normal lesson? Because this is going to be very fun. What we can have is that you guys can show the class something and I will be ready to explain it more in depth. For one whole class, we can have 5 to 10 people try it, or if a lot of you guys do it, then perfect. Also, I hope all of you guys come next time. I will end the polling and I've shared the results. Out of the 39 of you who answered it, 31 of you said yes and 8 of you said no. I've shared the results. So it is final that we will have the small kind of science fair, one lesson. It won't be, don't worry, you don't have to do it. You don't have to do it. You don't have to do it. But if you would like to do it, then you can, there will be another poll in the Facebook page, a sign up where you can sign up for your, and you can type your topic, you can type who's doing it, and then we'll, in one of the classes, it won't be next class, I'll tell you that for sure, but in a very soon class, we'll have it where one of you will demonstrate something. You can share your screen if you want. You can have a slideshow. You can show something on a table like I did with the water and rock cycle, or you can have a slideshow. You can teach the class about it. I'm not teach, but demonstrate it, and I'll go more in depth about it. So now that we have it, it is ready. And thank you everyone for joining. Next week lesson, you guys, it's a surprise. You guys will find out. Thank you everyone for joining. I appreciate you taking your time to learn science with me. And I hope all of you guys come to next week. Thank you guys. Bye.